Hi, Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome back to another episode of CHE'GU Bincang. I'm Saada Faisal, your host for this episode, and today we are going to have a very interesting discussion about language barriers in university, overcoming communication challenges in the classroom. Together with our special guest today, Dr. Muhammad Azani Saad, the Deputy Dean of Postgraduate and Responsible Research. Assalamualaikum, Doctor, and how are you?
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for asking. And how about you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today for this podcast. Doctor, before we go and start, can you tell our audience about yourself?
Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank CHE'GU TV for having me today. I feel very honored and feel a bit like a celebrity myself, even though I'm not. As has been introduced by the sister moderator, Sister Saada, my name is Azani. I'm currently the Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate and Responsible Research at the Kuliah of Education. I'm with the Department of Language and Literacy, where I am responsible to teach a number of linguistic courses to students majoring TESOL at undergraduate and postgraduate level. I think that's all.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that lovely introduction. It's wonderful to have someone with your background and experience joining us today. I'm sure our listener will really benefit from the insight you will be sharing throughout this podcast. Now, let's dive into our topic for today. Today, university have students from all over the world. They speak different languages and come from many different cultures. The mix of people makes the university experience rich and exciting, but it also leads to some challenges, especially when it's come to talking and understanding each other. In this episode, we will talk about what these barriers look like, how they affect students, and what we can do to make communication in the classroom a little easier. Let's get started with the question. May I start the first question, Doctor?
Yes, please.
All right. So the first question, Doctor, based your opinion, what do you understand about the language barriers?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Sounds like a final exam question for me. Though you said just now that I have to make a declaration a bit that, though you say that, with my background, but I have to say that I'm not an expert, but probably I can have some sort of sharing with my limited experience as a teacher. Okay, language barrier, if you want to speak from the theoretical perspective, it means obstacles or challenges that you experience as a language user, particularly when you speak second language or foreign language. So when you have difficulties in the case of, you might not be very proficient in that particular language, or you might have issues. But I'm not going to say that not necessarily for the foreign or second language, but sometimes you can also experience language barrier in the case of when you speak the first language, especially when your first language background is coming with some sort of like a very noticeable accent. So when you are within this speaking community that speaks the standard language, then your accent might cause you to be some sort of like intimidating somehow. Then you might not have the pleasure to participate in the conversations. Hence, that is also another example of language barrier. So I can say in general, language barrier would be the obstacles or challenges that you as a speaker would experience due to language issues. And language issues can be anything, and it can take place in either first language, second language, or foreign language. I hope that's okay.
Okay. It's a great explanation from you. It's really helped us to understand what is about language barriers look like in everyday university life. So can we continue for the second question, Doctor?
Yes.
All right. For the second question, it sounds, based your experience, have you observed any differences in how language barriers impact students across various fields or study?
Okay, definitely. I have to say that, I don't think I am the only one who encountered the experience. I think any teachers would experience this kind of situations, and it is not limited to language classes. It can also happen in any other classes, even mathematics classes and all these kind of things. I would give a very typical example in classroom setting. First of all, classroom settings. This is where we will see the most noticeable situations of such language barrier, where we can have students to have the answer, but they might not be able to give the answer due to language issue, because that's where the definitions of language barriers would be. Or sometimes when they give the answer, they don't know how to form the answers properly. Again, due to language issues. So this would be, as I said, a very typical example of situations where students would experience language barriers. Another example that I can give, which is beyond the classroom context, would be that, for example, in the case of us in the International Islamic University Malaysia, where we have students or we have friends from all over the world. So sometimes, I'm not sure, maybe because during my time as an undergraduate students, we somehow, I'm not sure going to say that it's a requirement, but somehow when we were placed in Mahallah, then it's some sort of like our roommates, one or two would come from different countries. So in that particular case, we were put in a situations where we are forced to have a conversations with them. But sometimes we don't speak to one another. That is because we don't know how to be socialized with them due to language issue. So I would say that would be another classic example of situations where students would encounter issues in the case of language barrier, where they would have a limited social encounter with speakers who don't share the same first language as them. So that would be the case. So I think I have given, you were asking about examples just now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one is in the classroom settings where students might feel shy to share answers, or though they know the response to questions, or they want to be part of the discussions, but they might not be able to do so due to language issue. And then beyond classroom context where you don't want to, or you are not very much engaged in social activities with students or your friends who might not share the same first language as yours.
I see. That's really interesting, Doctor. It's true that different study field can bring different kinds of communication challenges.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we continue for the third question, Doctor. What advice could you give to students who are worried about language barriers?
Okay. In my class, I'm a bit strict, not strict in a way that I would punish the student if they somehow don't speak or anything, but simply because they are students majoring in TESOL, so they should somehow speak in some sort of like a proper way, because they will be the one to teach that particular language in future. So maybe because I would be a bit strict when it comes to them formulating the idea in that particular language, making them do not want to speak more. But I will just speak in the general context, where in that particular case, as I think any teachers would say to the students, you don't have to be afraid, you don't have to be shy, though you might encounter some difficulties to articulate your ideas or articulate your response, especially in class. You just go for it, because we understand that this is a learning process for everyone, not just for the students, but also for the teachers. So my advice, number one, would be, don't be shy or don't be afraid. You can give a try. I'm sure teachers, though some might be very, what do you say, that maybe very scary looking teacher, or some might be very nice, but I'm sure that all teachers would have the same principle of, we understand that this is part of the learning process. So just, number one, don't be shy or don't be afraid. Number two, definitely we are talking about language barriers, so it goes to language development. So in this particular case, as part of the positive language development for anyone, you just have to be exposed to the surrounding. So in a way, for you to be exposed to the surrounding, you just have to engage yourself with anyone around you, and just keep on having social activities where you have to talk to others. So this way, maybe at the very beginning, you might find yourself to be having difficulties, or maybe to some extent, maybe people will make fun of you because of your accents, probably, or maybe some of the grammar Nazi will say that you have grammatical mistakes in your speech. But this is, I think, at the very beginning. But you just have to continue, be consistent, and take it as something that we can say to be a constructive criticisms, where sooner or later you will find yourself to improve yourself in the case of articulating yourself in that particular language.
All right, thank you, Doctor. I think that's a really helpful tips. I'm sure a lot of students will feel reassured hearing that. So the last question, Doctor. In one sentence, How would you describe your journey with language and communication at university?
One sentence only? Can it be more than one sentence?
Maybe.
Okay. Because you was asking me about me reflecting the journey. This is like me having to revisit the journey of myself. I came from a Islamic school in a very rural area in the north of Malaysia, which is in Baling, Kedah, where no one speaks English in that particular area. Um, Obviously we studied English at that particular time simply just to pass the exam, and that's in my case. So where we studied English just simply to pass English paper in SPM, and true enough, we passed. So, and I know after SPM I wanted to come to IUM, and I wanted to major either in mathematics or English, but looking at the mathematics program, then we have to pass physics, but my physics is a bit not a bit worse, it's worse. So I switched to English. So you can imagine coming from this kind of backgrounds where you come from a very, rural area, Baling, coming to KL, where everyone, my classmates, all coming from KL, some come from, have schooling in abroad. So it makes me to feel a bit shy or to speak in English, because it's something that this is an environment where I'm not used to. But I am very thankful or grateful to all the lecturers, because the way of them handling the classes, especially dealing with quiet students, they would ask us to speak, they would initiate us to give some idea, they would initiate us to ask question and all these kind of things. So through this kind of strategies, which is why I always do in class, which I will always ask my students to give response, this is not just for us to see whether you understand or not, but this is also something for us to foster you to speak up. And when you speak, then you can improve your language proficiencies, which in a way will overcome your language barriers issues. So if you want to ask me in one sentence of me reflecting the journey of improving the language, overcoming the language barriers issue, I would say it has been an interesting journey, but it's not going to be, some experience would not be very pleasant, but some would be. But okay, it's just for me to not be shy. Okay.
I think the key is not to be shy.
Yes, definitely.
Just be brave and try it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. It's such a great experience that you have going through, Doctor. So before we wrap up today's episode, let's quickly go over what we talked about. We explore what language barriers are and how they show up in university life, not just in speaking, but also in how students feel and connect with others. We learn the different field of study also can bring different type of challenges. We also heard that there are ways to overcome these struggles through support, practice, and understanding. Teachers and lecturers can play a big role by giving students space to grow and help them to boost their confidence. At the end of the day, language should never stop anyone from learning or feeling included. With the right support, passion, and attitude, we can all make classroom more welcoming for everyone, no matter where they come from or what language they speak. I think that concludes our discussion for today on this episode of CHE'GU BINCANG. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Azani, for sharing this insightful discussion with us. And I hope our audience can gain something from our discussion today. Don't forget to follow our podcast, CHE'GU BINCANG, for more meaningful discussion. Until next time, I'm Saada Faisal, your host for today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hashtag Great Teacher Inspires.